Hi everyone, welcome to the very first video of the U.S. History course. Today we are going to be discussing the American Revolution very briefly and touching upon some of the highlights from the Revolution. The text and objectives for the lesson are the following. We are going to analyze and evaluate the text, intent, meaning, and importance of the Declaration of Independence, and we are also going to explain the contributions of the Founding Fathers. We will have an opportunity to examine and discuss the Declaration of Independence with a partner once we are done with the lecture. Let's go back to the origins of the American Revolution, which started with the French and Indian War in 1754. This conflict pitted Great Britain against France and its Native American allies over territory in North America. And even though the British won this war, they left the British government with a lot of debt. And as a result of this, the British government felt like they had to tax the colonists in order to pay down this debt. The colonists were unhappy with these new taxes, things like the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, and the Tea Acts, because Parliament had passed these taxes without their consent. The colonists didn't have any representation in Parliament, and so they didn't get to vote on these new taxes, and they felt that they were being taxed without representation. One of the reactions to these quote-unquote unfair taxes was that the colonists protested by dumping tea into the Boston Harbor during the Boston Tea Party in 1773. And the British government reacted to this by closing down the Boston Harbor and also pretty much shutting down the colonial government in Massachusetts. They sent troops to keep the colonists in line, and they refused to open the harbor up until they paid back all the money that they had caused in damage. So the tensions continued to mount in the colonies between the colonists and the British government, and eventually it all blew over, and the first shots of the American Revolution were fired at Lexington and Concord in 1775. So there are many people in the colonies who supported the British government because they were British citizens themselves, but there are many others who want to get their independence from Great Britain. And so one of the supporters of the war was a man named Jonathan Trumbull Sr. He was actually the governor of Connecticut, and he was the only colonial governor to side with the colonists. All the other colonial governors were on the side of the British government. But his important role in the war is that he supplied the army with food, clothing, and munitions to help him against the British. Another supporter was a man named John Peter Muhlenberg. So he's a Protestant minister, and he fought in the Revolution himself, but most importantly, he recruited soldiers for the Continental Army. He was part of a group of ministers known as the Black Regiment. They're called the Black Regiment because they wear their black robes, but their important role in this is that they would preach during their sermons that people should join the revolutionary cause, and so they recruited volunteers for the revolution. So the Declaration of Independence was actually signed during the Second Continental Congress. The Second Continental Congress brought delegates from all the colonies to discuss what to do with the problems with the British government, and they eventually decided that it was time to declare their independence. And so they also named George Washington commander of the Continental Army, and they tasked Thomas Jefferson with writing the document of the Declaration of Independence. He wrote most of it, and he also explained in it why it was important that colonies seek their independence. So he lists all the grievances, all the complaints that they have against the British government. And he also puts forth a theory of government that was inspired by a man named John Locke, who was an Enlightenment thinker from Europe. And we'll discuss that in the next slide. So this idea that John Locke had that was embedded into the Declaration of Independence was that the purpose of government is to protect citizens' unalienable rights. Unalienable rights are rights that are given to you by God, and they cannot be taken away. And citizens, according to John Locke and Enlightenment thinkers like him, can replace a tyrannical government if it's not protecting your rights. And so in the Declaration, they spent a good amount of time listing their complaints and saying that the king has failed us in so many ways, therefore we have the right to replace him. And let's talk about some of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. We consider these our founding fathers, and one of them is John Hancock. He is the president of the Continental Congress, and he's also the first person to sign the Declaration of Independence. And so his signature, because it's the very first one that we see in the document, became a symbol of freedom in the colonies. Dr. Benjamin Rush also signed the Declaration of Independence. He was a delegate at the convention, and he is nicknamed the father of American medicine. He is known for his philanthropic efforts. He proposed the establishment of a university for public servants, meaning he wanted people who worked in the government to be well educated and trained. He also supported educating women, which was very progressive for the time, and he established the oldest African American church in the country. Charles Carroll of Carleton was at the convention as well. He helped finance the revolution with his own money, and he also helped in the struggle for the acceptance of Roman Catholics who were discriminated against at the time. John Witherspoon also signed the Declaration. He was a Presbyterian clergyman, another delegate, and he was from New Jersey. He actually was the president of the College of New Jersey, which eventually became Princeton, one of the Ivy League colleges in the United States. All right, so that brings us to the end of the lecture. We will have the opportunity to evaluate the text, meaning and importance of the Declaration of Independence when we do our activity. But most importantly, you need to remember these founding fathers and what their contributions were to the United States. If you have any questions, bring them to class, and thank you for watching.